What up, skirmishers? It's your pal Graham. I'm coming at you with another Tours of Duty register building video. Just to kind of talk through my thought process when I'm making Tours of Duty lists. These are the kinds of things that come to my mind, and if you're relatively new to Legion, you might find some of this helpful or inspiring. Today, we're specifically going to talk about how to turn a mechanical idea for your army into a thematic idea, because Tours of Duty is all about just juicing the theme out of your army so that you can really embrace the narrative, I think is the end all be all goal here. So today we are going to make a Republic army based around a specific Jedi Knight lightsaber build. So I'm on Tabletop Admiral. I'm going to go to Tours of Duty in the top right under Legion Miscellaneous. And this is my Clairvoyance build. This is a terrible name. We have to come back and fix that later. All right, so this is a Republic army, and as per usual, we start with 600 combat potential, which is the maximum number of points we can have on our register, and then from that register, we build our army. We also see that up in the top right or top left, we have supply points equal to 5. So every time you start a new army, you have 5 supply points to work with. I usually try to spend 3 or 4 of these at setup, and then that way I have 1 if I need it in a pinch after I play a game or two, and I'm like, you know what, I really need that supply point I saved for a rainy day. So that's what we're going to try to do here. I started this idea with a mechanical build in mind. So this is rules first, and then we're going to build a theme around it. Our Jedi Knight General is going to be our Paragon, so I'm going to click on that yellow star there. Boom! Paragon. And her name is going to be Claire. We're going to fix that later because that's vanilla. And Claire has some upgrades that we're going to choose. So you can see now where it says equipped and programmed. These are required. We get these 2 for free. We don't have to spend any supply points to add these upgrades to our register. And then on top of that, being a commander or operative, we also get 2 free initial upgrades beyond those required ones. So we're going to start with 4 upgrades that we don't have to spend any supply points on. Part of this is thinking about what is going to make Claire work the way that I want her to. And part of this is going to be prioritizing, like, what can I get later? What does it make sense for my character to learn later as they go through their adventures, right? So, like I said, I have a very specific build in mind, and this is going to be the Clairvoyance build. That's right. That's why her name's Claire. So Clairvoyance, if you don't remember, you can expend a card once per game to get a complete reroll on all your attack dice or all your defense dice. And I want to try to use this offensively instead of like a once per game mulligan, so that I, don't like you blank 4 out of your 5 saves and then you take 4 wounds and you're like, wow, my character's almost dead. Typically, I put Clairvoyance on a character to kind of mulligan out of that and try to get a couple wounds back. But we're going to try to use Clairvoyance offensively, and we're going to try to use it multiple times a game. So to start our build, I actually am going to use one of our 2 free initial upgrades to add Clairvoyance, the Force Power to our character. And we're going to combine that with Jedi Training Force Adept. And it says you get a Force slot, jump 2, and when this unit would expend a Force upgrade, instead you can exhaust it, meaning that you can get it back with a recover action, or in our Jedi Knight General's case, they also have Master of the Force 1, which lets you get back a tapped upgrade. So this lets us use Clairvoyance potentially every round. We're going to put some other things on this character so that she's not just using Clairvoyance, but that's kind of the premise. What would be really good to pair Clairvoyance with? You might ask. Well, there's 3 different lightsabers we get to choose from, and we're going to lean into this high variance twin lightsabers build. I almost love the vision of the theme of, like, Claire can see moments into the future or a future that could be, and that lets her not stab herself with 2 lightsabers, which is a very important skill to have, I would imagine. So this die pool is 4 black, 4 white, so it averages like 3 hits, which is not incredible, but it's also very swingy. There's a chance that you blank basically all your dice. There's a chance you could hit with all of your dice, and having that clairvoyance mulligan to re-roll the entire dice pool, I feel like could land some big hits and make some really splashy, like memorable moments on the tabletop. And so we're going to double down on that. So her twin lightsabers is going to be one of her equipped upgrades that she gets for free. And now we have to choose one of our 4 doctrines for our Jedi Knight. And after giving it some thought, I still think that Jedi Guardian is the best for this particular build. So this is one of the few ways that you can get charge on your custom Jedi, which does allow you to double move and then attack in melee instead of a single move. So it effectively doubles your threat range for being able to get into melee. Not even so much as like a threat for damaging your opponent's stuff, but like you're safe in melee, right? Melee is much safer to be than just out in the field because this is a game that leans into ranged combat. And so your Jedi are even with deflect and those surging red saves, there's a chance that they can get shot off the field if they're not really careful. Granted, Claire does have clairvoyance to kind of help mitigate that. So if she does get hit with a couple of shots and one of them she does take a bunch of wounds from, she can clairvoyance to save those. But I really think that having charge is super effective here. And importantly, Jedi Guardian also gives her surge to hit. When you have 8 dice, that surging to hit ups your average output more so than if you only have 6 dice like with one of the other lightsabers. Specifically, it brings her average up from 3 hits to 4, which is pretty notable. So I'm confident that Jedi Guardian is the best choice for what we are trying to do here. And then we have the option to spend supplies and provisions to add additional upgrades to her. I don't normally like spending supplies and provisions at the onset of my Tours of Duty register, because what if that unit dies? And then you've invested supply points that then are wasted because that unit has become a casualty and you can't use them in your army anymore. However, your Paragon can't really become a casualty. They just get special setbacks. So that means that if we want to spend supplies and provisions on Claire, we can do that. While we're here talking about her, let's discuss what those options are. So she has 2 Force slots and 2 training slots. One of each is already taken up with the upgrades we have, so we can potentially add another Force upgrade and another training upgrade. And I think there's some obvious ones. Oh, I forgot that she actually gets a 3rd Force slot from Jedi training. So we have 2 Force slots and a training slot to work with. So one thing that I think is a pretty safe choice potentially is if we wanted to use supplies and provisions for Burst of Speed. So Burst of Speed is a once per game expend where you get to make your Jedi speed 3 instead of speed 2, which extends their double move charge threat range by 4 inches total. Which in your head is like, oh, it's only 4 inches. But in reality, it does unlock a lot of options in practice for which units you can charge into and where you need to be on the battlefield. Even if it's just like, well, I can get to that unit, but if I could go to the far side of that enemy unit, I could also contest that objective. It unlocks that kind of stuff. On top of that, it synergizes with what we are doing with Force Adept, and we can exhaust Burst of Speed instead, meaning that later on in the game we can actually Burst of Speed again to dance over to somewhere else. So Burst of Speed feels like it fits pretty well with what we're trying to do, and I'm just going to go ahead and spend that supply and provision. Is that the singular version of supplies and provisions? Or is it just a proper name? Anyway, English is fun. So we have 1 Force ability left and 1 training slot left. We don't have to decide on these right now. But if I were going to look at some things, so 1 could be Saber Throw. That would let us throw 4 black at range with charge. And I kind of feel like that's not super helpful, if I'm being honest, because if I was going to saber throw someone, I guess it'd be Force Surging Black. That's similar to like a Cad Bane attack pool, which is notoriously not super good. If I wanted to do saber throw, I would actually consider pairing it with the training that is called Mission Objective. So once per round, effectively, you can reroll one attack die if you're attacking someone that's contesting an objective. This is really good with small attack pools. So like those high quality, like I'm only going to be rolling like 2 or 3 dice, but this is going to help me like, land that. Because effectively, you're adding an extra die to your pool, whichever, So in this example, if I had 4 black dice, I'm re-rolling one of them. I'm effectively rolling 5 black dice. Well, if you have an attack that's like, like red, black, high velocity, pierce 1, and you whiff on one of those, like that's not very good. But if you're adding a black die that you rolled, like the amount of improvement you're making on your attack's output is pretty high, right? So you go from red, black to red, black, black. That's like a 40% improvement. So mission objective is really good for small dice pools. I could see doing like a mission objective saber throw version of this. But she's my general. I kind of want her to have like a support type of ability. Like so far I've built her to punch dudes, and that's good. And I want her to be able to do that. But I like her almost being a bit of a, I'm going to call it like a Zen warrior, right? Because if the theme is clairvoyance, she can see moments into the future. She's like, patience, everyone. Like the time to strike is not yet. I kind of like that theme. So I'm actually going to go with, I think I'm going to do force guidance here. Well, hold on. Let me think about it. No, that's right. Yeah. We're going to do force guidance, for those thematic purposes. And then if I were going to add a training slot to her, I actually didn't mean to click that. Couple different options. I think seize the initiative is always very useful for your paragons, because I'm sinking a bunch of points into this character, and I want to have a lot of control over when she's going to go. So like that's pretty good. You can always do peacekeeping mission with prepared positions. That has to start up the board. That's fine. I put guidance on her, force guidance, so she can give herself a surge token. So the reliable 2, a little bit redundant here. Sometimes like tenacity is pretty good if you're trying to increase your damage output, particularly with a really swingy dice pool. So that's fine. Into the Fray is always good on force users. But again, she can use force guidance to give herself that surge token. So a little bit redundant. All that to say, I think if I had to pick one thing I didn't talk about yet is offensive and defensive stance. Why would I do this? Well, so stance, if you take you can, when you aim or dodge as an action, you get double tokens. So you can either get 2 dodges or 2 aims. Her Jedi Guardian gives her lethal 1. And she has this really swingy die pool. So my thought is when she does get into melee, if she wants to just like aim punch something, being able to get 2 aims, 1 for lethal, 1 to re-roll a couple of those attack dice, is potentially very good. Especially if like she doesn't want to use clairvoyance or doesn't have clairvoyance up because she got burst of speed up. Or like sometimes I roll an attack pool and it's like I get 4 out of 8 hits. Well, do I really want to clairvoyance the whole thing? Maybe I would be better off just spending aims, So I'm going to try doing that. But the stance I feel like is not as important as some of the other stuff. We're going to leave her as she is, and then perhaps as she gains experience, she will work on her stance. So we've kind of built our character, and Claire's ready to go. She needs some soul. So let's talk about the theme a little bit. I mentioned that she is patient, and that she says, wait, now is not the opportune time, everyone. Don't strike yet. And I think there's a couple different ways you could go with that and how it's going to manifest yourself in your list. One is if she had powers to move people around. That could be pretty cool. So actually, one of the trainings that we could give her could be, where are the training slots? Tactical acumen, so she can spend an action to give a non-combat action to a core trooper with guidance. That fits thematically. I still envision her as doing like backfield support, and then ultimately she's going to have to dive in. That it also could be interesting if she like spends her turn, she attacks with her twin lightsabers, defeats a unit, and then orders another clone unit to like move or stand by or something like that. That's kind of interesting. I also think that there's a bunch of other ways that she could manifest on the battlefield. Like if she's using Force guidance to coach people, maybe I want to include units that really benefit from those surge tokens. I think that could be really interesting. My last thought to kind of give this army some more personality is to give Claire a Padawan. And so that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to use an operative Jedi Knight, and we're going to call this Padawan Stan. Also bad name. So just like Claire, Stan is here. He's ready to play, and he gets 4 free upgrades. I have what I call the Ayla Secura build, which is just something that I do personally. And that's what we're going to use here. Because I want Claire to be the centerpiece, and she's got a pretty good attack profile in melee. I don't want that overshadowed by the Padawan, so I don't want to put the Padawan in offense. Also, I talked about sort of a patient pace of play to go with Claire's theme, and so I want to basically make a support Jedi. And so here's what I'm going to do. So we're going to use... specifically, I want to use Force Barrier with the Jedi Knight. Now, the Jedi Knight does not have Master of the Force, so to get Force Barrier back, we're going to have to recover. One way that we can get extra mileage out of Force Barrier is to, in our training slot, use, what is it called? Peacekeeping mission for prepared position. So your Jedi Knight starts on the board, has Force Barrier up. Ideally, as part of your first round command card, you do give the Jedi Knight an order. Your units get shot at some point during the first round. You use Force Barrier. Your next turn, you activate the Jedi Knight. First action, recover to get the Force Barrier back. And then second action, you probably move and get into position. And just make sure that you are positioned to help protect your army. So you kind of get 2 Force Barriers in the first round, or a Force Barrier in the second round, and then 2 Force Barriers. Sorry, 1 Force Barrier in the first round, and then 2 barriers in the second round, potentially. So I like giving prepare positions to that Force Barrier unit. And then we have a couple of options in terms of like what to give them. In the interest of variety, like I could give this unit charge with a double-bladed lightsaber. My Ayla Secura build instead, I just use, I think I use the regular lightsaber. And then instead of another Jedi Guardian to charge in, I actually don't want to do that because... Guardian is unique, and so if Claire has Guardian, I don't want my Jedi Knight to have Guardian. So instead, I'm going to use the Jedi Consular for action compression. So you get steady with this, right? That means that you can recover as one of your actions and still like move and attack like a normal unit would. So that's how I kind of keep my actions up with this build, and then I still have to choose a lightsaber. It kind of doesn't matter. I have steady, so theoretically, with the consular, I get another force slot. I could use my second force slot on saber throw. But, I'm just here to have a good time. I feel like the kind of mediocre consular ranged weapon that's 3 black dice, it's like fine. So in the interest of making this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to choose the generic lightsaber for block. And then when I put supplies and provisions on Padawan Stan, I'm going to choose my second force ability, which is going to be force reflexes. That way, if Padawan Stan does get into melee, they can use force reflexes to get a dodge, and that's going to then stack with block from their base lightsaber, so they're surging to block. When they're in melee, they're less likely to get defeated. That's cool. And then they recover and they get the force reflexes back. So that's what we're going to do for Padawan Stan. I think it makes sense for a patient build that can kind of line back. It's kind of how I view Stan, whereas Claire is going to charge in with burst of speed and charge from Jedi Guardian. Cool. So now let's build an army around it. As with all clone armies, there's deceivingly few options that you get to choose. I like having some backline stuff, and I like having some frontline stuff. Now, Padawan Stan is going to start on the board with that force barrier up, which means that we can do some prepared position stuff. So there's 2 prepared positions units I want to talk about. We're going to add a clone trooper marksman squad, and we're going to call this Overwatch Squad, because they're going to hang out with Stan and overlook the whole army, and they're going to bring an RPS, because I really like that on the marksman squad, and we're going to give them a specialist. So the specialist lets them gain a token during their turn, and then if they ever get a chance to recover, meaning like they don't need to move that turn, then you get the specialist back. They wipe all their suppression, and they're good to go. So that's a nice build, and points-wise, it is 90, which is not the most expensive clone squad. The other prepared positions units that we can, of course, use as ARC Trooper strike teams, and ARC Troopers are always good. So we're going to add 2 units of ARC Troopers and 2 ARC strike teams. You could do 1 and 1. That's fine for this particular build. I just like ARCs. I think ARCs are great. And they have a cool new heavy weapon, which makes them notably better in tours of duty. Before, you had to spend supplies and provisions to get a leader. And if you wanted a 5-man squad, you don't have to worry about that anymore. So we're going to go ahead and put those DC-15X gunners on our base ARC Trooper squads. And then the strike teams are going to come with their snipers to clock in at 49 points. And that's all well and good. We're going to start with 4 prepared positions units. Our Jedi Knight, potentially protecting the marksman squad. And I kind of view those 2 as kind of coupled together. And then, depending on where I want to put my snipers, I can put my ARC snipers nearby them to benefit from force barrier. But they also have incognito, so they don't necessarily need to start by Stan. They can, be elsewhere on the board. So, but that also gives us 2 support tokens so far, 2 special forces tokens, and we're at 1 core trooper squad. So in order to make a legal list, we need another clone trooper infantry squad, or another core unit. So we're going to add another infantry squad here, and it's kind of hard to pass up the DP-23. Shotguns are always good. Alternatively, I could put on a mortar for the surge to crit. Let's do the DP-23. I think that's fine. I'm not sure what personnel to put on here. With GAR, there's 2 things in tours of duty to keep in mind. One is, because all your stuff is expensive, it's hard to make a register because like just putting in the basic free upgrades like fills up your register. So you don't even have points left over if you wanted to buy additional upgrades with provisions, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that because your register is going to fill up, you almost always just have to do active recruiting right off the rip. I mean, obviously you can make a 600 point army and just play with that once, and that's fine. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and buy active recruiting at the start of my build, and that way you can also see, like, if you started with 600 points, what would the next 150 look like? So we're at 714 right now, and we have not added a personnel to our clone trooper infantry squad. You know, I don't feel like any of these particularly synergize with the army. The only thing that jumps out to me is it's always fun to do a beef clone squad with the shotgun. You just march up the table. You basically have extra bodies so that you're more likely to get in a bunch of attack dice when you finally get into melee with that juicy shotgun shot, right? It's a good threat unit. And I don't have a ton of threat units so far. I guess the ARC troopers are my threats right now, right? Because they're 5-man squads. At range 2, they're rolling 12 dice, 11 black and a white. It's pretty good. And we're kind of using Padawan Stan as like a mini Obi-Wan, where he's protecting the ARCs on the way in. You know, so I would do one of two things. One is I would toss in a clone specialist if I just didn't know what else to do and I wanted to get more points on my register. I'm probably not playing 750 point games. Well, I guess I could. If you and your opponent say we want to play 750 point games because, you know, like game 1 we're going to do 650, game 1 we're going to do 600, game 2 we're going to do 750. Sure, that's fine. Then you want to fill it out, and maybe it's worth putting a personnel upgrade on there. I'm not even going to take it. I'm going to save those points for later. And then, just as an FYI, if I were going to continue building out this army, I already have the 2 support slots, so I am tempted to put in either Barks or ATRTs. I would probably, at this point, I'm feeling like that patient reactive play, the not very aggressive play. Part of me just feels like I like the long range stuff. So I would do 2 ATRTs next with impact guns, whatever the laser cannons are on that. And you need another core unit, and so I'll put in another infantry squad. Because I've got ATRTs on the list, and they're clone ATRTs, so they do have red saves and armor 2. They're a little bit defensible. If I really didn't know what to do and I wanted to do something fun, you could consider on your clone infantry squads putting clone engineers on them and just get extra health for whatever that first ATRT is that's getting shot, right? So that's kind of fun. Let's go ahead and do that for the purposes of this discussion. So I've got this is an engineer squad. What are we going to call this? I don't know, gear squad, right? Cool. So I would do gear squad, and then one of my next upgrades would be piston squad, and it would be the exact same loadout with a shotgun and another engineer, right? So early in the game, they use those engineer repairs to keep your ATRT alive as they march up the board, and then they get to range 2 and they start blasting. That's what I would do here. And then that gives me some room to add those ATRTs. Let's see, the ATRTs are 75 points with the laser cannon. So 2 ATRTs is another 150 points. So I would, after my first game, I would do active recruiting to go up to 900 points, add that piston squad I just mentioned. And maybe 1 ATRT. And then after that, I would do into my third game, I would do active recruiting again to get up to 1,050 as my combat potential, and then get my second ATRT. And then that's really the crux of my list, right? It's a marksman and 2 engineer infantry, and then 2 ARC troopers, 2 strike teams, and 2 ATRTs. And that whole list clocks in at 11 activations, with your 2 Jedi. And I think that's the list. And part of what I'm doing mechanically is that the ARCs benefit a lot from the surge tokens that are being given out by Claire with her Jedi Guardian, Force Guidance. So Claire's giving out the surge tokens to probably 1 to herself if she's in melee, and 1 to an ARC trooper that's helping her out in melee. Or early on in the game, she just gives 2 out to the ARC troopers that have stepped onto the table. Great. And I think that whole army is going to play kind of patient, where you want to advance up together. You got some long-range fire from the ATRTs and the marksmen, and then some medium-range stuff with the shotgun squads, and then you've got your close range and your ARC troopers as well. And then the ARC troopers have charge, and Claire is going to charge in. And so like round 3 is when you really want to engage with those. And it's going to be a nice, like, balanced list in terms of the pace of play. And I think that fits. I think that fits her personality. Keeping the Padawan back also is patience. I think that's great. Because then they can be like the linebacker that's defending your long-range stuff and waiting for the enemy to engage on your points, and then the Padawan engages, and they have a chance to prove themselves to Claire. It sounds great. That's a good story I think we're telling. And then it begs the question, what happens, right? If Stan does go to defend a point in game 1 and then gets totally steamrolled by some sleeper cells, like, what's the lesson Stan learns there? He gets an injury or setback on the chart because he gets injured from this encounter, and so he's going to try to learn to be better. And maybe now he's got a chip on his shoulder. Maybe he's tired of being patient and he lunges forward, but he doesn't have charge, and so that backfires, right? Like there's a teacher-student lessons learned thing, and then what is Claire learning from her position as a teacher for Stan? And if Stan keeps struggling, what does that say about her teaching ability? I don't know. That's like storytelling, right? That's fun. That's really good. I start off every campaign with a medevac if I get to play with the house rule, which is you don't have to spend the medevac if you bring it. Rules as written, you do. And then if you don't have a good target for medevac, it's just kind of like, well, wasted. I didn't care about that clone squad, and I had to use my medevac, so that's a shame. It's a waste of an SP. If you make it optional, then you just bring the medevac every time, and you get to choose 1 unit that you're not going to use a casualty check on. And it does let you build up that XP a little bit more consistently, which is good if you're not able to play like a ton of games. So I found that to be a very nice house rule. Another one that I would consider getting is contingency plan, which lets you choose, it lets you pivot from one agenda to another one. Then we have to choose our story arc. And so the default one for Gar is Peacekeeping Mission, which is appropriate. It also has one of these cards is like very specifically like clone trooper coded. I forget what it is. Or maybe it's, it's the commendation. So when your clone trooper units get to VR3, they can choose to take this commendation that potentially increases their courage. You might not even like play enough games to get to VR3 on your clone trooper units. Like, I don't know. So you also might choose a different commendation, and this doesn't, play into anything. So you're not forced to do Republic with Peacekeeping Mission. But the way I would view this is what are some teaching opportunities for Claire to teach Stan? and more importantly, what are some missions that they might be sent on for the Galactic Republic. So, I think peacekeeping mission works just fine. The other one I would maybe consider is like liberating the system. I feel like is kind of aggressive, right? Like you're pushing back against the man. Thematically doesn't seem to make a ton of sense. Root out corruption is interesting. It's interesting for a couple reasons. One is you are like stationed in a system, and then like you're watching and learning to try to figure out where the corruption is. Your special commendation for this is going to be Reliable One, which is great mechanically on clones. And then, if I remember correctly, these agendas are, I don't know. Thematically, they feel good to me, right? So you get the long game. Each time your opponent gains priority, put a token on this agenda. So like if they're trying to like if you play lower like high pip cards so that you're more likely to go second, you like advance this agenda more. That fits with Claire's patience. Investigate corruption during each end phase if you are contesting a POI in contested territory. If Claire is contesting a POI in contested territory, advance this agenda. And then by doing that, you can gain extra experience points. So, her having the ability to like burst of speed into the enemy army, hack some dudes up, and then late game burst of speed back to one of the POIs here. I feel like that opens up some stuff, right? So I'm going to do root out corruption. I think that sounds like fun. And let's see how many SP I have left. I have 1 supply point left, so I would save that for a rainy day. If I were going to spend that right now, I would consider either putting offensive stance on Claire, or I think I get another force slot on Stan. So for Stan, I would do where is Stan? Stan's like halfway down the sheet. Okay. I would put force reflexes on Stan, so that he can trigger block more easily when he does get stuck in. Because again, he can't like take a dodge, move into melee, and then get a free charge attack because he doesn't have a charge. So instead, I would free action get the dodge, first action move into melee, second action punch. Right? Cool. Yeah. So I would. Those are the next things I would spend my SP on, and then obviously after your next couple of games, you're going to be taking the active recruiting each game to continue to grow your army until at least you get to that 1050, and then usually I consider spending it elsewhere. So there you go. Well, I hope that was interesting and fun. If you have any thoughts for the discussion, feel free to put them in the comments below. If you like my weird Jedi builds, the Jedi in general, the custom Jedi feel like they're in tension with themselves. It doesn't feel like there's any builds that have a very specific, correct synergy. It's because they give you a bunch of like random abilities, and then it's up to you to decide how you want to use that and which abilities you're leaning into. Good example of that is with Stan. I put on peacekeeping mission to give Stan. Oh, you can't see what I'm looking at. To give Stan prepared positions because I wanted that to synergize with Force Barrier. You could also do peacekeeping mission because you really wanted Reliable 2. And that was your way of boosting the damage output on those twin lightsabers that are swingy instead of using Jedi Guardian, right? So like you can pair different things together to get different results and different effects that you want. It's all about how you choose to use them. And so that's kind of why that's why the customs are simultaneously fascinating and infuriating. So anyway, thanks for watching. And if you like this kind of video, give it a like. And yeah, we'll talk to you later. Roll good, play better. That's what I'm supposed to say at the end of this.